In the first video of our series on Nader Shah, we discussed his rise from an ordinary foot soldier serving a local governor in Khorasan to one of the most powerful military and political leaders of the Safavid realm amid internal chaos and external threats from all sides. Afghans had captured the capital of Isfahan, Ottomans were taking over the Caucasus, Russians were encroaching on the Caspian coast, and there was no powerful figure in Iran able to change the tide. At least it probably felt so at the time, but Nader had other ideas. Welcome to our second video on the last great conqueror of Iran, Nader Shah, where we discuss his wars against the Ottomans and the Afghans, and his rise to regency. Do you know why thousands of people on YouTube and Patreon support us financially? Because they get history you won't find anywhere else. We release 3 new exclusive videos every week. Plus, they get perks like early access to all videos, voting rights on upcoming series and videos, access to our private Discord, our production schedule, and much more. Right now, 250 exclusive episodes are waiting for members and patrons, including from our series on the Eastern Front of World War II, Spanish War of Succession, the Punic Wars, the Pacific War, the Iberian Reconquista, the Russian Revolution and Civil War, the North African and Italian campaigns of World War II, Sicilian Wars between the Greeks and Carthaginians, and many others. By joining, you're not only unlocking rare content, you're also supporting the stories you love. Your help allows us to keep producing 3 free videos per week while paying our team competitive salaries and growing the channel. Join via the links in the description, the pinned comment, or by pressing the join button under the video. Thanks for making this possible. So, we are in the year 1729. Nader has just dealt with the Afghans in the east, retaking Herat. Now his sights are turning west to expel Afghans from the capital, Isfahan. By that point, Murche-Khort, the man who defeated the Safavid Shah Sultan Hussein to capture Isfahan, had already been killed by his cousin Ashraf. The new Afghan ruler managed to halt the Ottoman advance just west of Isfahan, forcing them to retreat all the way back to Baghdad. But internally, things were not getting any better. During the war with the Ottomans, Ashraf ordered the beheading of Shah Sultan Hussein to send the Ottomans a message. Chaos, famine and disease were ravaging the formerly Safavid territories. The Afghan occupiers engaged in murder, robbery, and were generally uninterested in ruling for the good of the people. A series of unsuccessful revolts broke out against the Afghan rule by rebels, many of whom claimed to be the sons of Sultan Hussein. We do not know whether any of them really were, but we do know about his son, Tahmasp. At this point, he was a pawn in Nader's power games, but nonetheless, he was the rightful heir to the Safavid throne and carried symbolic political importance. The aforementioned revolts under the Safavid name and news of Nader's success in Herat prompted Ashraf to move with a 40,000-strong army towards Khorasan to defeat Nader and Tahmasp in August 1729. By early September, the Afghan army was besieging Semnan. Around this time, Nader's 25,000-strong army moved out to intercept Ashraf and set camp around Bastam. Nader sent word to the garrisons of Semnan, asking them to hang tight until his army arrived. Upon finding out about Nader's arrival, Ashraf left a small force to continue besieging Semnan, while the majority of the army under his command moved towards Nader. The first engagement between the armies took place near Sharud sometime in September 1729, when Ashraf's advance guard under Muhammad Said al-Khan tried to attack Nader's artillery, but was beaten back. From there, Nader's army advanced to meet with the Afghan army near the village of Mehmandost on the Sharud River Valley with 2 steep hills on either side. On September 29th, Nader's army divided into 4 units, and Ashraf's army, divided into 3 units, formed up for battle. We do not know about the exact size of the fighting force on each side, with sources reporting anywhere from 6,000 to 25,000 soldiers for Nader and from 16,000 to 40,000 for Ashraf. But most sources agree that Ashraf had a manpower advantage during the Battle of Mehmandost. Ashraf was so confident in his victory that he designated a 2,000 to 3,000 cavalry force to wait for the Safavid army to retreat and pursue them to capture Nader and Tahmasp. At the start of the battle, something unexpected happened, as Nader ordered his host to withdraw to the left towards the Tal Hills. A several thousand-strong cavalry unit from the rearguard was tasked with covering this withdrawal. Ashraf thought Nader was retreating and ordered his left flank, commanded by Muhammad Said al-Khan, to attack. Nader's cavalry delayed the Afghans with firearms and arrows, allowing the army to reposition. Now Nader's cannons and Zanburek guns were positioned on the slopes of the Tal, with the rest of the army in front of them. Ashraf ordered his army, the vast majority of which was cavalry, to attack Nader from all sides in a fierce, decisive charge, attempting an enveloping movement with his numerically superior force. It must have been a truly terrifying sight for Nader's men, seeing tens of thousands of riders fiercely charging on them, but his army was disciplined and waited for their commander's order. Only when the Afghans were close enough, Nader's cannons started shooting at the Afghan center, killing hundreds almost immediately. Ashraf's army continued advancing on Nader's flanks, which is when Iranian musketeers started firing. The momentum of the Afghan attack was now lost. They failed to break into Nader's ranks. After stopping the Afghan charge, Nader's army took the initiative as his musketeers pushed on the Afghan center and its artillery. Very soon, the Afghan resistance ended, as Ashraf's army was forced to retreat, losing around 12,000 men. Nader was victorious in the Battle for Mehmandost. But the war with the Afghans still occupying the capital, Isfahan, was not over. Nader's army and Tahmasp marched westward on Isfahan. The people on the way, tired of almost a decade of chaos, were happy to see a Safavid prince with a realistic shot of winning back the throne. On the way, reinforcements from different areas joined Nader and Tahmasp. Meanwhile, Ashraf was preparing for a defensive war with the approaching royal army. He judged that Nader's army would have to pass through a narrow valley to the east of Varamin, and positioned sharpshooters and artillery on the way to ambush them, with his cavalry concealed to inflict further damage. But Nader's scouts spotted this, and his men managed to get into the Afghan rear and attack their ambushes from two directions. The Afghans were defeated here as well, forced to leave their artillery behind and retreat all the way to Isfahan. After massacring 3,000 men deemed capable of starting a rebellion against Afghan rule in Isfahan, and receiving artillery and gunners from the Ottomans, Ashraf left the capital to face off with Nader's army near the village of Murche-Khort. This time, Ashraf intended to fight a defensive battle, largely copying Nader's earlier tactics in Mehmandost. He positioned his infantry in the center, with the artillery behind them, while the cavalry units were detached from the main force, with freedom of maneuver to respond to the situation as it developed. Nader tried to lure Ashraf's host away from abandoning the defensive formation by firing cannons and marching his army across their flank, directly towards Isfahan. But Ashraf did not budge. At this point, Nader decided to order a charge on the Afghan positions. He sent his musketeers forward, who were supported by cannon fire. After absorbing the enemy fire, the musketeers fired at the Afghan formation from a point-blank range before charging forward with swords. Ashraf sent his cavalry to stop this charge, but it was too late. Very soon, Nader's army broke through to the Afghan artillery, and their formation broke. Ashraf's army fled. On November 16th, Nader entered Isfahan. A few weeks later, Shah Tahmasp arrived as well. Nader met him outside the city walls with a formal ceremony. The capital residents rejoiced at the return of a Safavid Shah, hoping that things would now get back to normal. After putting an end to looting and restoring order in Isfahan, the Safavid court started planning its next move. After all, large swaths of the formerly Safavid territory were not under their control. Shah Tahmasp wanted his commander, Nader, to pursue Ashraf and end the Afghan threat once and for all, and rescue the Safavid princesses he kidnapped on the way out of Isfahan. But Nader acted as if he was not keen on another campaign, claiming that his men were tired and that it was time to return to Khorasan. This is unlikely to be true, since energetic Nader was not one to shy away from military campaigns to expand his influence. Michael Axworthy, a prominent historian of Nader Shah, argues that the Afsharid general was merely putting on a show to extract rewards and concessions from Tahmasp for helping him win back the throne. Nader only agreed to finish off Ashraf after Shah Tahmasp granted him personal rule over Khorasan, Kerman, and Mazandaran, allowing Nader to collect taxes throughout the country for the army and giving his sisters in marriage to Nader and his son Reza Koli. Simultaneously, Nader became the ruler of a significant portion of the Safavid territory, expanded his personal legitimacy by marrying into royal blood, and secured funding for his army. The stage was set for the expansion of Nader's power, and just as he was diligent and attentive to detail in military matters, Nader was also very thorough in tax collection. According to Axworthy, Nader paid close attention to money matters, and over the succeeding years built up a complex network of officials, inspectors and spies to control and monitor taxation, changing and strengthening the structures that had served the Safavids. Each province had to submit regular accounts. After the laxity of the later Safavids and the chaos of the Afghan-dominated period, a strong central authority with real administrative control returned. But Nader's tax demands were high. They were sometimes doubled without warning, and the penalties for evasion were harsh. Nader gained a reputation for having eyes everywhere. On December 24, 1729, Nader's 20,000 to 25,000 strong army marched on Ashraf. The two armies met at Zankan, northeast of Shiraz. Yet again, Ashraf attacked, but was beaten back by the disciplined musketeers of Nader. In the ensuing counterattack, which Nader personally led, the Afghan army was defeated. Ashraf sent the captive royal princesses to Nader as a gesture of surrender. The rest of the Afghan army disintegrated, while Ashraf managed to escape. Nader had decisively won this round of the war against the Afghans. But Nader was not one to sit idly. The western part of the empire was still under Ottoman occupation. From Shiraz, he sent a letter to the Ottomans demanding the return of these territories, but with no answer forthcoming, Nader marched his men for another campaign, this time against the Ottomans. He arrived very quickly in Nahavand, taking the Ottoman commander by surprise. Confident in their previous victories over the Safavids, the Ottomans decided to engage them. But after a short battle, they retreated to Hamadan. Evidently, this was not the Safavid army of old. A 30,000 reinforcement force was sent to aid the Ottoman army in Hamadan. Nader, with his 25,000 men, approached the Ottoman army in the Malayer Valley with a small stream separating the two forces. Both armies shared similarities in their composition, with the bulk of their forces consisting of musketeer infantry. At the beginning of the battle, musketeers of both armies came within firing distance of each other and exchanged fire. In the early going, neither side had an advantage, as cannon and musket fire raised a cloud of smoke and reduced visibility on the battlefield. Taking advantage of this, Nader strengthened his right flank under the cover of smoke. He broke the stalemate when he ordered his right wing to cross the stream and launch a daring assault on the Ottoman left, which was caught by surprise. For hours, the Ottomans resisted the Safavid assault, but their morale was broken when the Ottoman standard-bearer was killed. The Ottoman army fled, with Nader's cavalry pursuing them, killing and capturing thousands. The victory at the Malayer Valley enabled Nader to take Hamadan and Kermanshah. Rumors of defeats in the east caused unrest in Istanbul, and the Ottoman government sued for peace with the Safavids. But Nader did not really care about negotiations between the governments, and pressed on to decisively defeat the Ottoman army. Nader approached the Ottoman army at Mehmandost, but the latter fled without offering any resistance. Several skirmishes later, the Ottoman army, suffering from low morale caused by a series of defeats, had been disintegrating. After defeating the Ottoman governor of Tabriz, Mustafa Pasha, near Sahalan, Nader entered Tabriz, the old capital of the Safavids. Nader captured many Ottoman soldiers and women, but, consistent with his earlier and later behavior against the captives, he treated them well, forbidding anyone from harming women, and ensured that they were taken home safely. Nader could not take advantage of the 1730 revolt in Istanbul, which deposed Sultan Ahmed, as news from the east upended his plans. The Afghans were in revolt once again, and Nader marched there to deal with them. Herat was the first casualty of the Afghan revolt, as Zulfikar Khan captured it in 1729. Then he moved on to Mashhad, Nader's power base, which he could not afford to lose for prestige reasons. His brother, Ibrahim Khan, was in charge of the city, and Nader ordered him to stay put and wait out the siege, since the Afghans lacked heavy cannons to breach the city walls. But in his quest to prove his worth to his brother, Ibrahim disobeyed Nader's order and moved out of Mashhad to confront the Afghan host, but was defeated and forced back into the city. The Afghans went on plundering the countryside of Mashhad before withdrawing eastwards. In November 1730, Nader arrived in Mashhad, recruited more men into his army, and ordered their meticulous training for the upcoming campaign. after wintering and celebrating Iranian New Year, Nowruz in March, Nader marched on Herat in April 1731. His army proceeded with encircling Herat by capturing minor forts and towers around the city. At one point, it almost led to a disastrous outcome, as Nader was somehow left with only 8 musketeers in one of these towers. Muhammad Said al-Khan, a veteran commander of many wars against the Safavids, led a large force against this tower. For a while, Nader and his men successfully resisted, but had it not been for an infantry detachment relieving them, the story of this great conqueror could have ended prematurely. Talk about the importance of minor events and happenstance for the general course of history. In any case, after several failed attempts to break through the siege, the Afghans surrendered Herat to Nader in February 1732. The problem was that when Nader was winning in the west, problems occurred in the east. When he was winning in the east, problems occurred in the west. This was true for that moment as well. Eager to prove himself and exit the shadows of Nader, Shah Tahmasp marched on the Ottoman army in the Caucasus in early 1731. On his way to meet the Ottomans, he replaced the governor of Tabriz appointed by Nader. Tahmasp's 18,000-man force defeated the Ottomans in a minor skirmish south of Yerevan, forcing the Ottoman army to withdraw behind the city walls. But the Safavid siege of Yerevan was unsuccessful and short-lived, as the other Ottoman force managed to slow the supply lines to Tahmasp's army, while another Ottoman army commanded by Ahmed Pasha moved from Baghdad towards Hamadan and Kermanshah. Tahmasp hurried to meet this force, leading to the Battle of Khorasan, where the Safavid army was soundly defeated. As a result, Tahmasp squandered any advantage gained by Nader in the previous campaign and was forced to agree to a treaty favourable to the Ottomans. They were ready to concede Tabriz, Hamadan and Kermanshah to the Safavids in exchange for the territories north of the river Aras. Upon hearing about this, Nader sent letters to the Ottoman Sultan Mahmud demanding the return of all occupied territories and publicly denounced the treaty through a manifesto. This manifesto, wherein Nader vowed to fight until all the Iranian captives were released from the Ottomans, heavily exploiting religious motives, was a clear symptom of Nader seeking to finalize his transition from only a military commander to a political ruler as well. In the spring of 1732, Nader marched out of Herat with his army and sent a letter to the Shah, inviting him to meet in Tehran. By May, Nader's force consisted of 80,000 cavalry and 40,000 infantry, aiming to impress those on his way to Tehran, and most importantly, to show Tahmasp what he would be facing if he dared to oppose Nader. Still, he did not come to Tehran, so Nader went to Isfahan instead. This is when another facet of Nader's character comes out. A masterful manipulator, cognizant of how appearances and perceptions work on the people who matter. Simply seizing the Safavid throne by force would raise lifelong questions about legitimacy. That is why Nader devised a different plan. He arrived in Isfahan with 32,000 men and had a brief meeting with Tahmasp at the royal court. The next meeting was to be held at Nader's camp. After a brief ride along the army, the pair retired to Nader's tent, where they imbibed in alcohol. Nader was not one to shy away from alcohol in the evenings, to relax and wind down after a heavy day of work or battle, but he had enough self-discipline to know when to start, when to stop, and how much to drink. Apparently, this was not the case for Tahmasp. Nader encouraged Tahmasp to drink excessively, and at one point, Tahmasp got simply too drunk. Then, Nader's men took the Shah outside, calling the army officers, nobility and courtiers to witness the state of Tahmasp. According to Axworthy, his crown had fallen to one side, his trousers were stained, and the top of his head was dirty as he lolled on the grass. Nader proclaimed that the Shah was not fit to rule, and suggested Tahmasp's abdication in favour of his son Abbas. Some encouraged Nader to ascend the throne personally, but recognizing the strong loyalty to the Safavid dynasty still existing in the country, he was content to rule as a regent. And so it happened. On September 7th, 1732, only a few months old, Abbas was crowned as Shah Abbas III, with Nader proclaimed as his regent and chief minister. At this point, Nader had become the ruler of the Safavid Empire in everything but name. In the next video, we will discuss Nader's policies, his character, additional military campaigns, and his eventual rise to the Shah. If you don't want to miss that and many other historical videos, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member-exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.